The weight of the world crashed down on me the moment I saw the pictures. Carefree smiles, champagne flutes, and seats that reclined into beds somewhere above the clouds. It was a perfect snapshot of a life I thought we all shared, a life that I was apparently too expensive to be a part of. The sting of their words echoed in my ears, a cruel soundtrack to their high-flying adventure. They thought I wouldn't find out, that I'd just keep working to support their lifestyle, never questioning where my hard-earned money went. If you've ever felt betrayed by the very people who should love you unconditionally, the ones who share your blood, then subscribe now and let's build a family of survivors together. A community where honesty and loyalty are valued above all else. Don't let toxic relationships define your worth. Join us. My name is Brooklyn, and for years I played the role of the responsible daughter, the one who always picked up the pieces. My mom had a knack for overspending, a talent for convincing herself that every luxury was a necessity. My brother, Ethan, well, he was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong in her eyes. From designer clothes to extravagant birthday parties, Ethan always got what he wanted. And who paid for it all? Me. I worked tirelessly, juggling multiple jobs to keep the family afloat, all while they lived a life of relative ease. I never complained, not really. I believed in family, in supporting each other through thick and thin. When my mom told me they couldn't afford to take me on vacation with them this year, that times were tough, I understood. I tightened my belt, picked up extra shifts, and sent them what I could to help with their financial struggles. "Brooklyn, honey, you know we'd love for you to come, but it's just not in the cards this year," my mom had said, her voice laced with a practiced sadness. "Maybe next year when things are better." I swallowed my disappointment and believed her. I always believed her. The constant drain on my finances had taken its toll. I had put my own dreams on hold, my own needs secondary to their wants. A small voice inside me whispered that it wasn't fair, that I deserved more, but I quickly silenced it. Family first, I told myself. Their happiness is my happiness. That's what I had been conditioned to believe, and that's how I had lived my life. Then the photos surfaced, plastered all over social media. My mom, decked out in a designer dress, sipping champagne in a first-class cabin. Ethan, grinning like a Cheshire cat, flashing a Rolex watch that I knew I had indirectly paid for. The caption read, "Living our best lives. #blessed, #family vacation, #first class." The blood turned to ice in my veins. The betrayal was a physical blow, a punch to the gut that left me gasping for air. The line between love and exploitation had blurred, then vanished completely. I wasn't part of their blessed family vacation. I was just the bank, the ATM that funded their lavish lifestyle. I felt a rage building inside me, a slow burn that threatened to consume me. But I didn't lash out. I didn't scream or cry. I simply closed my laptop and began to plan. They had underestimated me, mistaken my kindness for weakness. They thought I would continue to be their silent benefactor, their willing victim. They were wrong. The person I trusted most was one of them, my own father, bless his heart. He'd been growing increasingly uncomfortable with Mom's spending and Ethan's entitlement. He confided in me, sharing his worries about their mounting debt and the unsustainable nature of their lifestyle. He'd even started documenting some of Mom's more outrageous purchases, not knowing exactly what he'd do with the information, but sensing that something needed to change. He was as much a victim in all of this as I was, trapped in a gilded cage of my mother's making. Finding out he was also against this gave me the strength to move forward. The first consequence was the silence. I stopped sending money. I fabricated excuses, claiming a sudden illness, unexpected bills, anything to stem the flow of cash that had been their lifeline. The phone call started almost immediately. First, gentle inquiries, veiled concern about my well-being. Then, thinly disguised demands, reminders of all I owed them, of the sacrifices they had made for me. My mom's voice dripped with guilt, painting vivid pictures of their struggles, the electricity bill they couldn't pay, the groceries they couldn't afford. Ethan chimed in with his usual brand of entitlement, casually mentioning the new video game he desperately needed, the clothes all his friends were wearing. Each call was a fresh wound, a painful reminder of their selfishness. I wanted to scream, to unleash the fury that simmered beneath my carefully constructed facade, but I held my tongue. I needed them to underestimate me, to believe I was still the same naive girl they had always taken advantage of. The sleepless nights began. I would lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying their betrayal in my mind. The faces in the photos haunted me, their carefree smiles a stark contrast to the anxiety that gnawed at my insides. I tried to reason with myself, to find some justification for their behavior, but there was none. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. They didn't see me as family, but as a resource, a means to an end. My attempts to address the situation directly were met with denial and gaslighting. When I cautiously brought up the vacation photos, my mom dismissed them as just a little getaway, a necessary escape from the stresses of daily life. Ethan scoffed, accusing me of being jealous, of trying to ruin their fun. They twisted the narrative, painting me as the villain, the ungrateful daughter who couldn't appreciate their hard work and sacrifices.
"Brooklyn, we do everything for you," my mom insisted, her voice rising in indignation. "How can you be so selfish, after all we've done?" Their words were like knives, twisting in the open wounds of my heart. I started to pull away emotionally, creating a wall between myself and their constant demands. I stopped answering their calls as frequently, offering curt, impersonal responses to their texts. I knew this wouldn't go unnoticed, but I couldn't bring myself to pretend any longer. The weight of their injustice was crushing me, suffocating my spirit. The first real confrontation happened at my birthday dinner. I had reluctantly agreed to celebrate with them, hoping to maintain a semblance of normalcy. But the tension was palpable, hanging heavy in the air like a storm cloud. The gifts they presented were extravagant, designer handbags and expensive jewelry, all things I neither wanted nor needed. It was as if they were trying to buy my forgiveness, to compensate for their betrayal with material possessions. I tried to express my feelings, to explain the pain their actions had caused, but they wouldn't listen. My mom accused me of being dramatic, of blowing things out of proportion. Ethan rolled his eyes, dismissing my concerns as trivial. The argument escalated quickly, voices rising, accusations flying. I felt myself trembling, the anger threatening to erupt. "I just want you to acknowledge what you did," I pleaded, my voice cracking with emotion. "I want you to understand how much it hurt me." But they couldn't, or wouldn't. They were too caught up in their own self-centered world to see the damage they had inflicted. I left the restaurant in tears, the weight of their betrayal heavier than ever. I realized then that there was no reasoning with them, no appealing to their sense of empathy or fairness. They were incapable of seeing beyond their own desires, of acknowledging the pain they had caused. That night, I made a decision. I would no longer be their victim. I would take control of my life and exact my revenge. It wouldn't be easy, that I was determined to make them pay for what they had done. The plan started to take shape in my mind, a complex web of deception and manipulation. I would use their own greed and entitlement against them, turning their lavish lifestyle into their downfall. I knew it was a risky game, but I was willing to play it. I had nothing to lose and everything to gain. As I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, a sense of grim satisfaction washed over me. The tables were about to turn. They thought they had broken me, but they were wrong. They had only awakened the sleeping dragon. The game had just begun, and I intended to win. The following weeks were a descent into a personal hell. Sleep became a luxury I could barely afford, replaced by endless replays of their smiling faces, their carefree laughter echoing in my ears. I lost weight, my clothes hanging loosely on my frame. My reflection in the mirror was a stranger, a gaunt, hollow-eyed ghost of the person I once was. Work became a blur, a monotonous cycle of tasks performed on autopilot. My colleagues noticed my decline, their concerned glances and hushed whispers adding to my sense of isolation. I withdrew from social gatherings, unable to bear the thought of feigning happiness, of pretending that everything was okay. The world felt muted, as if a thick fog had settled over everything, obscuring the joy and beauty that I once found in everyday life. I was adrift, lost at sea in a storm of my own making. My apartment, once a sanctuary, became a prison, the walls closing in on me, suffocating me with their silence. I spent hours staring out the window, watching the world go by, feeling like an invisible observer, detached from the lives of those around me. The temptation to give up, to simply surrender to the despair that consumed me, was overwhelming. There were moments when I considered ending it all, of escaping the pain that had become my constant companion. But something held me back, a flicker of defiance, a spark of hope that refused to be extinguished. The thought of them winning,
of them continuing to live their lavish lifestyle while I suffered in silence, fueled my resolve. I couldn't let them break me. I wouldn't let their selfishness define my life. I had to fight back, to reclaim my power, to make them pay for what they had done. I started researching ways to protect myself financially, consulting with lawyers and financial advisors. I learned about the legal loopholes they had exploited, the ways they had manipulated me into funding their lifestyle. The more I learned, the angrier I became. They had systematically taken advantage of my trust, my loyalty, my love. They had treated me like a fool, a mindless source of income to be exploited and discarded. This time, they made a huge mistake. They violated my trust, and I started documenting everything. My dad even started providing me with information. The more he did it, the more I trusted him. His discomfort made me realize that I wasn't alone in this war. He was my ally, and I needed him. After I talked to him, the glass in my hand shattered, sending shards of glass across the floor. My vision blurred, a wave of dizziness washing over me. I sank to my knees, overwhelmed by the weight of their betrayal. The crimson drops welled up in my palms, mixing with tears. The physical pain was a welcome distraction from the emotional torment that raged within me. As I bandaged my wounds, I stared at my reflection in the broken glass. The ghost of a smile flickered across my lips. They thought they had broken me, but they were wrong.
They had only made me stronger, more determined. The game had just begun, and I was ready to play. Their biggest weakness? They thought they were untouchable. They reveled in their perceived superiority, their unwavering belief that they could get away with anything. They underestimated my intelligence, my resourcefulness, my capacity for revenge. They saw me as a naive, compliant pushover, someone they could manipulate and control without consequence. They were blinded by their own arrogance, their own greed, unable to see the storm brewing on the horizon. This was their downfall. They believed themselves to be invincible, immune to the consequences of their actions. They flaunted their wealth, their privilege, their disregard for others, never imagining that their lavish lifestyle could be threatened. They were living in a fool's paradise, blissfully unaware of the trap I was setting for them. Their arrogance was their vulnerability, the chink in their armor that I would exploit to bring them crashing down. I meticulously gathered evidence of their financial improprieties, their fraudulent schemes, their manipulative tactics. I documented every lie, every deception, every act of betrayal. I built a case so airtight, so irrefutable, that they would have no choice but to face the consequences of their actions. The plan was risky, audacious, and utterly ruthless. It would require patience, cunning, and a willingness to play dirty. But I was prepared to do whatever it took to bring them to justice. They had taken everything from me, stripped me of my dignity, my trust, my sense of self-worth. Now it was my turn to take back what was rightfully mine, to expose their lies, to dismantle their carefully constructed facade. They had underestimated the power of a woman scorned, the fury of a daughter betrayed. They were about to learn that actions have consequences, and that no one, no matter how wealthy or privileged, is above the law. The day of reckoning was coming, and I couldn't wait to watch them fall. As I finalized my plans, a cold, calculating resolve settled over me. The pain and despair were still there, but they were now overshadowed by a burning desire for revenge. I was no longer the victim. I was the architect of their downfall, the puppeteer pulling the strings. The game was afoot, and I was determined to win. I became a chameleon, blending back into their world, playing the part of the dutiful daughter, the supportive sister. I showered them with attention, feigning interest in their shopping sprees and social gatherings. I even started sending them small amounts of money again, just enough to keep them complacent, to lull them into a false sense of security. All the while, I was meticulously gathering evidence, documenting their every move. My phone became my most powerful weapon, recording their conversations, capturing their boasts, preserving their lies. I installed hidden cameras in their house, disguised as ordinary household objects, capturing their true behavior when they thought no one was watching. The footage was damning, a chronicle of their greed, their entitlement, and their utter disregard for my feelings. I consulted with a forensic accountant, meticulously tracing their financial transactions, uncovering a web of deceit and hidden assets. He was shocked by the extent of their fraudulent activities, their attempts to conceal their wealth from the authorities. He provided me with the documentation I needed to expose their schemes, to bring them to justice. The hardest part was maintaining the facade, pretending that everything was normal, that I hadn't discovered their betrayal. There were moments when I wanted to scream, to confront them with the evidence, to unleash my fury. But I knew I had to remain patient. I needed to wait for the perfect moment, to strike when they least expected it. I started attending family dinners again, forcing myself to smile and laugh, to engage in meaningless conversations. My mom would brag about her latest purchases, her extravagant vacations, her designer clothes. Ethan would boast about his accomplishments, his social status, his expensive toys. I would nod politely, feigning admiration, all the while seething with rage. Each dinner was an act of torture, a painful reminder of their selfishness and their betrayal. But I knew it was necessary. I needed to maintain their trust, to keep them from suspecting my true intentions. One evening, my mom confided in me about a new business venture she was planning, a luxury boutique that she hoped to open in the city. She asked for my financial support, promising me a share of the profits, painting a vivid picture of our future success. I pretended to be interested, asking probing questions, gathering information about her plans. I knew this was the opportunity I had been waiting for. This was the perfect way to expose their fraudulent activities, to bring their empire crashing down. I contacted a lawyer specializing in fraud and financial crimes, presenting him with the evidence I had gathered. He was impressed by the thoroughness of my investigation, the strength of my case. He assured me that we had enough evidence to bring criminal charges against them, to seize their assets, to expose their lies to the world. We spent weeks preparing the case, meticulously organizing the evidence, anticipating their defenses, planning our strategy. I worked tirelessly, driven by a burning desire for revenge, fueled by the pain and anger that had consumed me for so long. There were moments when I doubted myself, when I questioned the morality of my actions, when I wondered if I was becoming as ruthless as them. But I quickly dismissed those thoughts. They had shown me no mercy, no compassion, no regard for my feelings. Why should I show them any now? They had made their bed, and now they would have to lie in it. The day before I was ready to execute the plan, my father called me, his voice trembling with fear. He had overheard my mom and Ethan discussing their plans to leave the country, to escape justice, to start a new life with the money they had stolen from me. He begged me to act quickly, to prevent them from getting away. I thanked him for his warning and assured him that everything was under control. I knew that time was running out, that I had to act fast. I contacted the authorities, providing them with the information they needed to track my mom and Ethan's movements. I arranged for them to be apprehended at the airport, just as they were about to board their flight. The feeling was exhilarating, a sense of triumph washing over me. They thought they could escape justice, but they were wrong. I had outsmarted them, outmaneuvered them, brought them to their knees. The final piece of the puzzle was the public exposure. I leaked the evidence to the media, providing them with the documentation and the footage I had gathered. The story went viral, dominating the headlines, exposing my mom and Ethan's crimes to the world. They were publicly shamed, ostracized by their friends and colleagues, their reputation ruined beyond repair. Their lavish lifestyle was over. Their empire had crumbled. Their world had come crashing down. The memory card. It was tucked away inside a seemingly innocuous digital photo frame, a gift they'd given me years ago, conveniently placed on a shelf in their living room. For months it had sat there dormant, a silent observer, until a chance remark from my father sparked my suspicion. He mentioned my mother being unusually nervous whenever I was near that frame, a subtle shift in her demeanor that only a long-time observer could notice. That night, under the guise of reminiscing about old times, I casually retrieved the frame, feigning interest in the old photos displayed on the screen. My heart pounded in my chest as I discreetly slipped the memory card into my pocket. Back at my apartment, I wasted no time inserting it into my computer. The files were password protected, but after a grueling hour of brute forcing, I finally cracked the encryption. What I found was beyond anything I could have imagined. It wasn't just financial documents or evidence of their schemes. It was a video of them, years ago, plotting to manipulate my father, to isolate him from his family, to slowly siphon away his assets. The video showed everything,
their cold calculations, their utter lack of remorse, the casual cruelty with which they discussed ruining his life. But that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was what came next. Another file. This one, labeled with my name.
The video started innocently enough, a seemingly candid conversation between my mom and Ethan. But as it progressed, the tone shifted, the smiles faded, and their true intentions were laid bare. They were discussing me, my naivete, my willingness to trust them, my financial dependence. The conversation took a darker turn. They started talking about my business, the one I had poured my heart and soul into, the one they had encouraged me to start. They were planning to sabotage it, to undermine my efforts, to steal my ideas and launch a competing venture, all while pretending to be supportive. The video ended with them laughing, congratulating themselves on their cleverness, their ability to manipulate me so easily. I felt a cold wave of fury wash over me, a rage so intense that it threatened to consume me. My hands trembled, my vision blurred, and a guttural scream tore through my throat. They had not only betrayed me, they had planned to destroy me, to take everything I had worked for, to leave me with nothing. They were monsters, pure and simple, and I would not rest until they had paid for what they had done. The evidence was irrefutable. The memory card became my weapon, the digital dagger I would use to pierce their carefully constructed facade. Now the game was truly on. They had no idea what was coming. The boutique, that was their grand plan, their final act of financial depravity. A high-end clothing store, catering to the city's elite, funded entirely by my stolen money, built on a foundation of lies and deceit. My mother envisioned it as her legacy, a testament to her impeccable taste and business acumen. Ethan saw it as his ticket to social stardom, a place where he could hobnob with celebrities and influencers, solidifying his position among the city's elite. They had already secured a prime location, a swanky storefront on the most expensive street in town. They had hired architects and designers, meticulously planning every detail, from the marble floors to the crystal chandeliers. They were even planning a grand opening party, inviting the city's most influential figures, a celebration of their success, a triumph over their victim. I decided to play along, to feign enthusiasm for their project, to offer my support in any way I could. I even volunteered to help with the grand opening party, offering to handle the catering and entertainment, knowing that it would give me the perfect opportunity to strike. They were thrilled, believing that they had finally won me over, that I had accepted their betrayal, that I was ready to move on. Little did they know, I was carefully laying the groundwork for their downfall. I used my connections in the catering industry to gather information about their suppliers, their contracts, their financial arrangements. I discovered that they had been cutting corners, using substandard materials, and inflating their expenses, all in an attempt to maximize their profits. I also learned that they had been soliciting investments from unsuspecting individuals, promising them exorbitant returns, knowing that the venture was doomed to fail. I compiled all of this information, meticulously documenting every detail, building an airtight case that would expose their fraudulent activities to the world. The grand opening party was set for the following Saturday. The invitations had been sent, the champagne had been ordered, and the guest list was finalized. My mother and Ethan were buzzing with excitement, eagerly anticipating their moment of glory. I knew that this was my last chance, my final opportunity to strike. I spent the week leading up to the party finalizing my plans, coordinating with my lawyer and the authorities, ensuring that everything was in place. I felt a mixture of excitement and trepidation, knowing that this was a risky move, that there was a chance that things could go wrong. But I was determined to see it through, to bring them to justice, to reclaim my life. The trap was set. All that was left was to spring it. That Saturday arrived, draped in false celebration. The boutique shimmered, an illusion of opulence built on a foundation of lies. As guests began to arrive, dressed in their finest attire, a sense of grim anticipation settled over me. This wasn't just a party, it was a stage, and the final act was about to begin. I moved through the crowd,
a phantom amidst the revelry, ensuring every detail was in place. The caterers were ready, the sound system primed, and the hidden cameras, strategically positioned, were recording every word, every gesture. My mother, radiant in a designer gown, floated through the room, basking in the attention, completely oblivious to the storm about to break. Ethan, ever the social climber, worked the crowd, schmoozing with potential investors, promising them the moon. They were both so close to their dream, so close to solidifying their fraudulent empire. They had no idea that their world was about to shatter. As the night progressed, I gathered my allies, my father, resolute despite the pain etched on his face, and my lawyer, a silent guardian, ready to unleash the force of law. We waited for the perfect moment, the precise instant to expose their treachery to the world. It arrived when my mother took the stage, champagne flute in hand, ready to deliver her triumphant speech. She began to speak, her voice ringing with pride, thanking her guests for their support, boasting about her vision, painting a picture of future success. That was my cue. I stepped forward, my heart pounding in my chest, a microphone in my hand. The music faded, the chatter subsided, and all eyes turned to me. A hush fell over the room, a moment of pregnant silence. I took a deep breath, and then I spoke.
Before my mother continues, I said, my voice clear and steady, there are a few things you should all know. The trap was sprung. For years I was blind, I began, the microphone amplifying every syllable. Blinded by love, by trust, by the belief that family meant something more than just shared last names. A gasp rippled through the crowd, a collective intake of breath as the weight of my words began to sink in. On the giant screen behind me, which I had rigged to replace the slideshow of family photos, the video of my mother and Ethan plotting against my father began to play. Their faces, so carefully crafted to project an image of sophistication and success, were now twisted into masks of malice and greed. The audio filled the room, their voices echoing their callous disregard for the man who had given them everything. A low murmur spread through the guests, their initial confusion giving way to shock and disbelief. My mother stood frozen on the stage, her champagne flute trembling in her hand, her face draining of color. Ethan, his usual swagger replaced by a look of stunned horror, tried to push his way through the crowd, but my father, his eyes blazing with a newfound strength, blocked his path. Then the second video began to play, the one where they plotted my downfall. The room went silent, save for the damning words emanating from the speakers. I watched as the expressions on the faces of the guests shifted from shock to disgust. Many were investors, people who had entrusted my mother and Ethan with their money, their futures. They were now witnessing the cold, calculated betrayal that had been planned for them. My mother finally found her voice, a desperate shriek that pierced the silence. "It's not true," she cried, her voice cracking with desperation. "He's lying. It's all a lie." But her words were drowned out by the chorus of voices now rising in anger and disbelief. People began to shout, to demand answers, to accuse her of fraud and deceit. Ethan, realizing that the game was up, made a desperate attempt to escape, but the authorities, who had been waiting outside, moved in swiftly, apprehending him before he could reach the door. My mother collapsed onto the stage, sobbing uncontrollably, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. The fallout was swift and brutal. The news of the scandal spread like wildfire, engulfing my mother and Ethan in a blaze of public shame. Their names were splashed across every newspaper, every news website, every social media platform. The boutique, once a symbol of their ambition, became a monument to their disgrace, the grand opening party now remembered as their public undoing. The investors, furious at having been duped, filed lawsuits seeking to recover their losses. The authorities launched a full-scale investigation into their financial affairs, uncovering a web of fraudulent transactions and hidden assets. They were charged with multiple counts of fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. Their lavish lifestyle was over, their bank accounts frozen, their assets seized. Their friends and colleagues, eager to distance themselves from the scandal, shunned them, their social circle evaporating overnight. They lost everything: their money, their reputation, their freedom. My father, finally free from their manipulation, began to rebuild his life, surrounded by the love and support of his true friends and family. He started a foundation to help others who had been victims of financial abuse, determined to prevent others from suffering the same fate he had endured. As for me, I watched it all unfold from a distance, a sense of grim satisfaction washing over me. I had achieved my goal. I had exposed their treachery, brought them to justice, and reclaimed my life. But there was no joy in it, no sense of triumph, only a profound sadness, a lingering bitterness that would likely stay with me for a long time. Revenge isn't sweet. It's necessary. It's a shield against further violation, a declaration that you will not be a victim again. It's a painful, messy process, but sometimes it's the only way to reclaim what was stolen from you: your peace, your dignity, your life. They lost everything. I just smiled. Would you have done the same? Let me know in the comments. Subscribe for more justice.